From the broadcast center at BCIT's Burnaby Campus, this is All Talk Radio. You're listening to 1680 The Crow.
Hello, I am Alicia in Alaska for 1680 The Crow, delivering you the afternoon headlines. Opposition conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is calling on Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to personally apologize for the presence of a Nazi war veteran in the parliament during a visit by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. He made the comment on the way into his party's weekly caucus meeting today.
He needs to pick up the phone and personally call President Zelensky and apologize to him. He needs to pick up the phone and call Jewish groups, not just in Canada, but around the world, and apologize to them. He needs to reach out to the Polish embassy and apologize to Poles all around the world.
As of right now, Justin Trudeau has apologized in the House of Commons. Stay tuned for the news updates. British Columbia has announced its first set of targets for new units to build in 10 municipalities for combating the ongoing housing crisis. Housing Minister Ravi Kahlon says the housing crisis is so dire in BC that the province is going ahead with its plans without guarantees of federal funding, but as the involvement from Ottawa needs to get in the game in a hurry.
Well, every day we're waiting for Canada to make a decision. It's having huge impacts on our communities. We have people living in encampments. We have people living in parks. We have people that are on the verge of losing their homes because of global inflation pressures. And so my message to Minister Fraser is we can't wait much longer. We need them to get into the game and get into the game in a hurry.
Kahlon's announcement comes as Premier David Eby says it's pretty clear the federal government isn't ready yet to share renewed housing strategy or how it will work with British Columbians' plans to tackle the provincial's housing crisis. A major way we can overcome the ongoing opioid epidemic is by changing the way we talk. Joseph Agosti has the story.
One of the major problems society has when talking about drug use is stigma. There's a ginormous stigma around people who use drugs, which can make it tougher for those people to speak out and seek help. Naloxone volunteer David Ackland knows the impact stigma can have on the crisis itself.
But I'm really normalizing that, like somebody who uses drugs is just like a drug addict or a junkie or a loser. They probably had a whole life outside of using substances, right? That's kind of where we start at.
Language matters, and the words we use do end up making a big difference. Joseph Augusti for 1680 The Crow.
Since the end of Expo 86 over 35 years ago, the infamous Mac Barge has been floating around the Lower Mainland, but it soon may find a permanent new use. Lachlan Irvin has more.
Known today as the Seabourn 2, the McBarge was once home to a floating McDonald's in False Creek. Now, it's anchored along the banks of the Fraser River as its owner, Howard Meakin, is working to find the Expo relic a new home. In an interview with BCIT News, Meakin said that a plan for a permanent home in Departure Bay in Nanaimo had to be shelved due to land contamination around the site. Now Meakin says they're focusing their efforts on another pair of locations for the McBarge, one in Squamish and another right back in False Creek, where it all began. Lachlan Irvin, 1680 The Crow.
We now have a reporter Lachlan live. Lachlan, why have the owners put so much into the Mac Barge even though it hasn't really been used since 1986?
Well, Alicia, having talked to Howard Meakin, it's pretty clear that he has a personal attachment to the McBarge. He was a developer during Expo 86 and including working on a number of McDonald's restaurants such as the McBarge. So it's clear that this kind of time and attention is more of a labor of love than one of business for him.
And do you think we'll hear about any official plans for the barge soon?
I don't think there are any concrete plans in the works for the McBarge as of right now, but it's pretty clear that people are very passionate about it, and as long as that exists, there's going to be people lining up to try and find it new opportunities. But so hopefully we will see a happy ending at some point down the line.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Lachlan.
Thanks.
Moving into national news, a new poll suggests the federal conservatives are still 12 points up on the government liberals in decided voter support. A Ledger Online survey of more than 1,600 respondents over the weekend found that among decided voters, the Tories had 39% support. Canadian Press reporter Karen Ribault tells us about the party leader is ahead of the pack as well.
The Leger poll found 26% of respondents believe Pierre Poilievre would be the best person to serve as prime minister, compared with 20% opting for the guy that has the job, Justin Trudeau, and 14% choosing NDP leader Jagmeet Singh. Just 1/3 of those respondents say they're satisfied with Trudeau's government, a result similar to that of a month ago.
The poll also found that in the last month, the percentage of respondents reporting concern over losing their job has dropped 5 points to 33%. Jurors will hear more evidence today at the Toronto trial of Peter Nygard. The former Canadian fashion mogul has pled not guilty to 5 counts of sexual assault and 1 of a forcible confinement in alleged incidents dating from the 80s to mid-2000s.
The founder of a now defunct international women's clothing company, the 82-year-old Nygard, has been accused of using his position in the fashion industry to lure women and girls. Crown lawyers opened their arguments yesterday, alleging all 5 complainants were invited for tours or job interviews at Nygard's office building in Toronto, with all the encounters ending with him forcing himself on them in his top-floor bedroom suite that featured a jacuzzi, bars, and doors with no handles and keypad-operated locks. The Crown alleged he sometimes trapped or intoxicated them. The trial is expected to last about 7 weeks. Karen Ribault, The Canadian Press, Toronto.
The production of Entertainment Tonight Canada is ending. In an ET post on Instagram Canada, the program has announced their decision, mentioning the impact on the team who have worked on the show for years.
Chorus Entertainment says it's decided to cease production on the long-running arts and entertainment news magazine after 18 seasons. The media company blames the cost of producing a daily show in what it calls a challenging advertising environment. Chorus-owned Global News reports that the final new edition of the show will air on October 6th. ET Canada is currently co-hosted by Sangeeta Patel and Cheryl Hickey, who has been with the show since its start in 2005. David Friend, The Canadian Press, Toronto.
The City of Calgary says it has charged a catering company and school lunch delivery service provider at the center of an E. coli outbreak affecting several daycares, as health authorities zeroed an unlikely source of infections.
The City of Calgary alleges that Fueling Minds had been providing third-party food services without a proper business license. The corporation and its 2 directors face 12 charges. This morning, the Chief Medical Officer of Health says odds were extremely high that one meal in particular was the cause, meatloaf and vegan meatloaf that was served for lunch on August 29th. Dr. Mark Joffe says there will be a third-party external review of the investigation. Bill Graveland, The Canadian Press, Calgary.
Moving into American politics, Republican challengers gather on stage tonight in California for their second primary debate. Former U.S. President Donald Trump will be in battleground Michigan, working to win over blue-collar voters in the auto workers' strike.
On the stage tonight here, there will be 7 Republicans who qualified, 1 less than the first debate a few weeks ago, but still the huge frontrunner among Republicans in our latest ABC News Washington Post poll won't be here. Former President Trump is almost 40 points ahead of his closest Republican rival, Ron DeSantis, and DeSantis is trending down. So tonight, all of those other candidates will be on stage in the shadow of the Air Force One Ronald Reagan used as they try to break through. Alex Stone, ABC News, Los Angeles.
Moving now into sports news, starting with soccer, the Vancouver Whitecaps look to snap a 2-game losing streaks as they visit the Colorado Rapids tonight. It will be a Vancouver 8th consecutive game away from BC Place Stadium. The Whitecaps sit 7th place in Major League Soccer Western Conference standings with 5 games remaining in the regular season. Now into baseball, the Toronto Blue Jays will send Jose Barrios to the mound against the New York Yankees. Ace Jarrett called tonight at Rogers Center. A 2-0 loss to New York last night prevented Toronto from inching closer to clinching a playoff spot. The Jays are holding onto the second American League wildcard berth, 1.5 games up on Houston and 2 games ahead of Seattle. The Major League leading Atlanta Braves overcame a 6-run deficit to beat the Chicago Cubs 7-6 last night. Cubs starter Justin Steele says the team is behind Seiya Suzuki, even though he made an outfield error that cost the game.
Oh, I mean, everybody's already, picking him up and stuff. That's the kind of team we are. We're not worried about that. There's multiple things that happen in a game that, could go a different way, and, the result of the game could end up being different. So, everybody's, on his side. We're picking him up. We wouldn't be here without him.
And in hockey news, the Calgary Flames winner Jakob Peltier is scheduled to undergo surgery on his left shoulder next week and will be out indefinitely. The Flames updated Peltier's status after the 22-year-old sustained an injury in preseason game against visiting Seattle on Monday. Peltier was checked head first in the boards the 6 seconds remaining in the first period. After riding on the ice, obvious pain, Peltier was escorted off the ice by the Flames trainer, noticeably flavoring his left shoulder. Tampa Bay starting pitcher Zach Eflin yielded 3 runs of 5 hits over 5 innings to earn his 3rd victory in 4 starts. And the Rays held in the beat at the Boston Red Sox 9-7 last night. Eflin says the win in Boston was more of the same for a Tampa Bay team that has big aspirations with the postseason right around the corner.
I've had so much fun this year, and whether it be my last start to the regular season or not, it's just been awesome. We're looking forward to the playoffs. We're ready to get going, but in the meantime, we're going to continue to try and win games and see where it takes us.
Looking at the weather now, condition of the day is mostly cloudy with temperature at 13 degrees and wind going north at 2 kilometers per hour. Pressure is at 101 kPa and visibility at 40 kilometers. Later today, expect periods of rain, ending in the morning, a cloudy condition with 40% chances of showers. Thank you so much for listening. I am Alicia Nolasco for 1680 The Crow.
Stay tuned for more on BCIT's 1680 The Crow.
Everything is changing to digital. Everything is online. People aren't just waiting for the 6 o'clock news anymore. People want their news right now. They want to be able to go onto their smartphone, onto the internet, and see the news that they want to see.
Vancouver is growing at, a really rapid rate, the Lower Mainland even, and with the tools that we're given here, we're able to cover all of that.
Welcome to BCIT Magazine. I'm Radhika Sikakane.
In the program, they really leave it up to you. I mean, the help is there when you need it, figuring out how to use the programs like Premiere, Audition, and figuring out how to use the cameras. But it's up to you to sort of experiment and figure out what you can do when you go out in the field.
They brought candles and flowers to remember the student who lost her life yesterday.
Theresa May says the international community condemns Moscow.
They really make sure that you know the basics and you are able to put out a quality product.
I'm Brady Tretnero.
And I'm Radhika Sikakane. Thank you for tuning in to BCIT Magazine.
This is 1680 The Crow, and you're listening to our feature presentation.
There's a lot of people who are struggling to pay rent. I get calls all the time. You know, I'm a mom and I have a child. I've been working. I lost my job, and the landlord's going to kick me out next month. Well, what the heck? She's going to be homeless with a kid.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of The Crow Chronicles. I'm Alicia Nolasco.
And I'm Kevin Pontius. What you just heard was an excerpt of an interview with Jim Mandolin, who works for the Homeless Services Association of BC. Jim is also a former addict and gave us some great insight on our topic today.
So today we're talking about homelessness in Vancouver, which has been a controversial topic for a while. So according to a study from SFU, the homeless crisis in Vancouver started in the 1980s, and it has gotten worse progressively.
Alicia, why do you think the homeless problem has gotten progressively worse over the years?
Well, prior to the 1980s, the federal government invested generously in the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation. This helped adequate affordable housing, and there was a moment where it stopped. So by the 1990s, the province was now taking care of housing. And I believe it's one of the main reasons it started to get so bad.
Over the years, we've had this stereotype when it comes to the homeless that you shouldn't be giving homeless people money because they're going to spend it on drugs or alcohol and they don't know how to manage money. Even growing up, I just feel like I was always told to never give a homeless person money, give them food or water because they're going to spend the money and just get drugs or alcohol. There was recently a study published by the Foundations for Social Change with UBC that actually proves the opposite of the stereotype.
The study gave 50 people who had been homeless for under 2 years $7,500 and tracked them to see what they did with it. They also tracked other 65 people who did not receive a cash transfer. The study also proved that the stereotypes are not connected to the reality, given that many of the people use the money on rent, food, and clothing.
We recently had the opportunity to speak with one of Vancouver's most renowned homeless advocates, Judy Graves. Given her decades of experience in the scene, we asked her what she thought about giving cash transfers to the unhoused.
I don't think that cash transfer is going to work for someone who has a severe addiction. The addiction will always take precedence, but most people who become homeless do not have severe addictions. So this would be a wonderful prevention program. So someone who's never been in the downtown east side before in their life will wind up there because it's the only affordable scrap of housing for them and just have a roof over their heads.
The biggest issue with Vancouver is that most of the time when people see a person in a homeless situation, they automatically assume that they don't have a job or are lazy. Most of the time, these people have severe mental health issues or addictions. I don't think anyone wakes up and decides to go through these circumstances.
Absolutely. Something that both Jim and Judy talk about is the main difference between being homeless and having an addiction. In many cases, they're both combined. Someone who's already struggling to pay bills and one day gets fired can end up in the streets. I believe that we need to do a better job at supporting our community, no matter what issues you might have.
I 100% agree. That is why this cash transfer project works great for people who need the money right away and don't have any addiction.
Yeah, our homeless population is mostly contained in Vancouver downtown eastside. And according to stats from the city, the government approximately spends $55,000 in each person per year. If we follow a project like the Foundation for Social Change did, this might be the solution that would benefit both the government and the vulnerable to save money.
I totally agree. Because with this, the government could invest in giving immediate help to people with addictions instead of mindlessly funding shelters.
Our guest speakers talk a little bit more in depth about this situation.
I know there's some, big treatment centers, but sometimes there's like you're an addict and you decide, okay, I got to change my life. I want to go get some help. So they go to an addiction recovery place and they say, okay, you can come for help, but 1 month or 2 months or 4 months waiting list. So go back out and try to survive try to stop the drugs and alcohol or whatever the addiction is on your own, and then come back in 3 to 4 months. Well, that's not going to work. Someone's ready to go into recovery now. There is very little help for that.
The thing that we've been asking for is detox on demand. That as soon as somebody decides that they want to leave the drugs behind, they need to be able to get in at that moment. It's a passing moment. They need to be able to get into detox immediately and be moved through to treatment immediately, housed away from the drug scene. If we were able to do that, we would save so many lives. We would save so many families. And it's not rocket science.
I don't know for you, but for me, it's incredible to me that both Judy and Jim have been working in all sorts of scenarios as advocates and share the same opinion when it comes to addicts not getting immediate help. What is your take on this, Kevin?
I think looking back at the study, it proved that the people they supported with the cash transfers ended up saving the government more money because it helped them get housing and other resources faster. This compared to the other people they tracked who did not receive any money and just had the support systems that are already there in place, to me proves that what Judy and Jim are saying is dead on.
100%, Kevin. The current system might not be working for everyone, and the answer to this is because many people don't feel safe going to shelters, especially when you're having a hard time dealing already with mental health issues and addiction. And our guest, Jim, was very open and candid about his experience in a shelter.
There's many people. Some people don't want to even go in shelters. They won't go in shelters. I wouldn't go in shelters when I was a kid. I went into a Catholic Charities shelter when I was in 1970, and because I was molested in my life from all kinds of weird people before 15, then I didn't, like I'd laid down on the mat, and then there's all these men in there, and they're moving around in the dark, and I'm going like, they're going to come and touch me. So I couldn't stay. And I never stayed.
There's no easy way to follow such a horrific and candid story. We just want to take a second to really thank Jim for being so vulnerable and open with us.
And that is why we need to be empathetic about why some people just straight up decide to live in the streets. It's very easy to judge anything, really, but we never know what someone's going through. Judy Graves also talked to us about how people living under these circumstances get an urge to get better, but given the lack and shortage of resources, the desires can't be met.
I do know from working with so many people who were addicted that every person who is addicted sometime during this year is going to wake up and say, I can't do this anymore. I've got to get out of this, and start trying to get into a detox. And they're going to be met with, well, we don't have a bed. We don't have space. No, you can't even sleep on the carpet.
I think the main thing we have learned from researching this podcast and interviewing our amazing guests is that we need to try new things. There's no direct solution to the problem, and it's an extremely complex issue. But if we keep doing the same things, we're not going to improve anyone's lives.
For sure. I think we could have more universities doing studies. Hopefully with some government funding, we could really start to understand what works and what doesn't. Because we already know what doesn't work, but we aren't doing enough to change it.
Thanks so much for listening to another episode of the Crow Chronicles. I'm Kevin Pontius.
And I am Alicia Nolasco. See you next time.
Everything is changing to digital. Everything is online. People aren't just waiting for the 6 o'clock news anymore. People want their news right now. They want to be able to go onto their smartphone, onto the internet, and see the news that they want to see.
Vancouver is growing at, a really rapid rate, the Lower Mainland even, and with the tools that we're given here, we're able to cover all of that.
Welcome to BCIT Magazine. I'm Radhika Sikakane.
In the program, they really leave it up to you. I mean, the help is there when you need it, figuring out how to use the programs like Premiere, Audition, and figuring out how to use the cameras. But it's up to you to sort of experiment and figure out what you can do when you go out in the field.
They brought candles and flowers to remember the student who lost her life yesterday.
Theresa May says the international community condemns Moscow.
They really make sure that you know the basics and you are able to put out a quality product.
I'm Brady Tretanero.
And I'm Radhika Sikakane. Thank you for tuning in to BCIT Magazine.
From the Broadcast Center at BCIT's Burnaby Campus, this is All Talk Radio. You're listening to 1680 The Crow.
Good afternoon. I'm Max Mashman, and these are your 12:30 headlines. Starting off in Vancouver, where a 13-year-old girl was awarded $27,000 after being wrongly accused of theft at the upscale South Granville restaurant Heirloom. The girl was the only worker at the restaurant who was confronted about cash register shortages, despite there being no evidence that she had stolen anything. According to a BC Human Rights Tribunal, the girl was unfairly singled out due to her race and sex and was subjected to a poisoned work environment. The tribunal awarded $25,000 to the girl for damages to her dignity, feelings, and self-respect, and over $2,000 for lost wages and expenses. A Metro Vancouver union is opting for action. Our reporter Rachel Davis has the story.
The Teaching Support Staff Union at Simon Fraser University has announced a total work stoppage starting Thursday. This means most lectures and research will be shut down, and some students are planning to strike in solidarity with the TSSU. Adriana Cumming-Tyker is an undergraduate student at SFU. She's worried about the effect the strike will have on students at the university and is creating a community space for queer students.
There is consideration that the university's actions might exacerbate students who are active suicide or self-harm risks. And so the idea of providing these community spaces is to offer a stopgap from total isolation that the university would otherwise be inflicting on these students.
According to the TSSU, there have been 41 negotiation sessions over 19 months. Richard Davis, 1680 The Crow.
And moving over to New Westminster, where a school board trustee has resigned after admitting to creating a fake Twitter account to troll parents and community members. Parents first raised concerns that the trustee, Dee Beatrice, had created the account and used it to attack parents, teachers, and other board members, as well as the president of the BC Teachers Federation. The New Westminster Progressives and Community First New West, the later being the party Beatrice was affiliated with, have issued statements confirming the resignation. NWP described Beatrice as disgraced and the scandal as a dark chapter for the board. Community First New West says they are relieved Beatrice is leaving and that it is the right thing to do. After Expo 86, one Vancouver curiosity has had trouble finding a new home. Our reporter Lachlan Irvine has the story.
Known today as the Seabourn 2, the McBarge was once home to a floating McDonald's in False Creek. Now, it's anchored along the banks of the Fraser River as its owner, Howard Meakin, is working to find the Expo relic a new home. In an interview with BCIT News, Meakin said that a plan for a permanent home in Departure Bay in Nanaimo had to be shelved due to land contamination around the site. Now Meakin says they're focusing their efforts on another pair of locations for the McBarge, one in Squamish and another right back in False Creek, where it all began. Lachlan Irvin, 1680 The Crow.
In national news, Justin Trudeau is giving his unreserved apology for recognizing a man who fought with the Nazis in World War II. The incident happened last week during an address by President Vladimir Zelensky. Trudeau is still putting the sole blame on Anthony Rota, the Speaker of the House who resigned yesterday over the incident.
It is extremely troubling to think that this egregious error is being politicized by Russia and its supporters to provide false propaganda about what Ukraine is fighting for.
Another national story, a new poll has the Conservatives up 12 points over the governing Liberal Party. Canadian Press reporter Karen Rebott has the story.
Fresh fall numbers from Leger's weekend online survey of more than 1,600 respondents found that among decided voters, Tory leader Pierre Poilievre's party has the support of 39% of respondents. That's 12 points ahead of the governing Liberals. The Bloc Québécois has fallen 7 points to tie the Liberals at 29% support among Quebec voters. The polling took place in the days following a bombshell announcement by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, alleging that the Indian government could be behind the killing of a Sikh leader near Vancouver last June, and after the Liberals unveiled new housing policies. Karen Rebott, The Canadian Press.
And now for the weather. It is 14 degrees and cloudy in Vancouver. Showers are expected throughout the day with heavier rainfalls coming in the early hours of tomorrow morning. We are expecting a high of 15 and mild winds, so dress warm if you are going out. For 1680 The Crow, this is Max Mashman, and those were your 1230 headlines.
Stay tuned for more on BCIT's 1680 The Crow.
Everything is changing to digital. Everything is online. People aren't just waiting for the 6 o'clock news anymore. People want their news right now. They want to be able to go onto their smartphone, onto the internet, and see the news that they want to see.
Vancouver is growing at, a really rapid rate, the Lower Mainland even, and with the tools that we're given here, we're able to cover all of that.
Welcome to BCIT Magazine. I'm Radhika Sikakane.
In the program, they really leave it up to you. I mean, the help is there when you need it, figuring out how to use the programs like Premiere, Audition, and figuring out how to use the cameras. But it's up to you to sort of experiment and figure out what you can do when you go out in the field.
They brought candles and flowers to remember the student who lost her life yesterday.
Theresa May says the international community condemns Moscow.
They really make sure that you know the basics and you are able to put out a quality product.
I'm Brady Tretnero.
And I'm Radhika Sikakane. Thank you for tuning in to BCIT Magazine.